Hello, I'm Sophia Barton, and I am delighted to be invited to give this talk, facilitated by Lady Kitt for GemArts Festival 2021. Narivad is my new work, which has been gratefully commissioned by GemArts for the Masala Festival. The festival is a mix and blend of the finest South Asian culture and arts across the Northeast. Please check out the full programme at www.gemarts.org.
Hi, I'm Lady Kitt. I am a white person with a shaved head and quite a smiley face. I'm an artist based in Newcastle, and I'm really interested in the social uses of art and how art and activism and campaigning can combine.
Hello, I'm Sofia Barton. I am a Punjabi brown person from Newcastle. I'm a Geordie and I love doing artwork based around nature and heritage.
So, Sophia, to start us off, I wondered if you could talk a little bit about maybe you could talk a little bit about how we met, because there's some relevance to that, I think, in the series of artworks that you're going to talk about.
Lady Kitt and I met back in, I think it was 2017. It was for the Nasty Women residency. Thank you so much for inviting me to that.
Thanks for applying.
And I met these lovely people at the Nasty Women residency. It was just brilliant to kind of see that community of people and kind of feel the passion behind people who wanted equality as well in Newcastle. That was a major thing for me.
What was the timeline, I guess, between when the original activist artwork you were making and then meeting some of the Nasty Women group and then developing your Narivad series?
Yeah, so I met the Nasty Women group in 2017, but I'd been making artwork, kind of exploring feminism and things around that in probably 2015, 2016. And my photography work was about migration, and some of it touched on mental health and domestic abuse, but I never really fully went into that. I didn't really fully start exploring things until joining Nasty Women and having that confidence, because I think once you know a collective of people, it's a lot easier. And then the Narivad series was this year.
I suppose we should explain what Nasty Women is very briefly, and then maybe you can explain because your Narivad series have a very distinctive style, like visual style each one, and then so maybe we can chat about what Nasty Women is and then talk about the visual style of those artworks. So for people who might not know, Nasty Women is a global art activism movement that was started in response to Donald Trump being elected in 2016, 2017.
Yeah, so doing the stuff for Nasty Women, I came across a figure called Dilip Singh. So when I was doing some work around that, and I'd met the Nasty Women, the group, I kind of looked into the Victorian era, and it's obviously when the British Empire was a massive thing. It was at its peak, and I was very interested to see how kind of the laws changed and equality changed for women, and what happened around then, because I didn't really learn about these hidden figures at school at all. So it started with one figure, and then it went from there. And it also got influenced quite a lot by my granddad, because he had quite a lot of little matchboxes. He was a massive smoker. He had tobacco and all sorts. He would constantly be smoking, but he also had these little matchboxes, and he liked collecting them. And I just liked all the pretty pictures when I was younger. And then kind of growing up, I remember the symbols on them. And I remember seeing like different like animals and things like that on them. I suppose it's like looking at old letters or old postcards. some of the images on there. It kind of stays with you. And then I kind of developed that into the Narivad series because I thought, what a great way of symbolizing something on a matchbox. It's kind of like, I'd done railway posters and things like that before, but then I heavily got into these because I kind of started studying Indian matchboxes a bit more. And then putting these figures onto the matchbox was kind of like making a mini poster of them, symbolizing them in a way.
Love the idea of them being on a matchbox and that somebody could like close that up and put it in their pocket and like wander off with this little bit of activist art in their pocket and have that with them every day. And it's like a useful object as well as being this really kind of precious work of art, and also like holding precious ideas. And I just absolutely love that about it.
Yeah, that was also a part of the kind of Narivad series to symbolize them in that way. And basically getting these images and then putting them onto matchboxes as well. So you'd have a matchbox made from the little image, the digital image. So yeah, that was a part of it as well, and getting all the kind of like the decoration around the side and the borders, and then getting the little symbols as well that kind of made them stand out more. And with a few of them, I think I put like dates of when they were born and also certain kind of events as well. So it all ties into their story. It's like a little story image.
And then really drawing like on some of those strategies that the suffragettes themselves used as well, like printing votes for women onto coins at the time. And I really like that reference as well, the fact that you're sort of pulling on those things that women did at the time, and exploring different ways to do that are relevant to you now. It's fab. I wonder if now we can maybe talk about some of the individuals in the series. And well, I guess because we've been talking about art and activism and the relationship between those things, I wonder if maybe Amrita Shergill's a good place to start.
Yes, definitely. I think she was one of the major people who has influenced me, and a lot of other people as well. And when we talk about hidden figures, generally this series touches on those people we haven't really heard about in history. So one of the artists that I would hear about all the time, and now as well, is someone called Frida Kahlo. But I would never hear about anyone like Amrita Shergill. And she was a Hungarian-born artist. She was born into luxury, and she moved to India to do her work there. I'll show some images of her work as well on the screen for everyone, so you can see the style. And yeah, I think she was very fascinated in kind of the real life of India. She wanted to show people who wouldn't normally be in paintings as well. So it wasn't just rich people and their abundance of like embroidery and lovely clothing. It was just everyday people, and I found that really kind of emotional, but also kind of insightful to look at. And also one of the things around her that I found really interesting was that she was also bisexual, and that was also kind of hidden from history because of her sexuality. Obviously now it wouldn't matter so much, but back then it did. And there's some scandal as well that her husband killed her, or her mother thought her husband killed her because he was a doctor who operated on her her first and second abortion, and the second abortion operation didn't go very well, sadly. I think she died when she was 28. So was quite young as well. But she's really highly influential, and there's like lots of her work. She did a lot before she passed away as well.
I think it's we've talked about this before as well, that it's really poignant that she, as somebody who was campaigning for equality, she died through a lack of it, and through the fact that because women's health hasn't been prioritised in huge, great swathes of history, the medical understanding for providing abortions just hasn't developed very quickly, and also a huge amount of like shame around wanting to access that kind of healthcare as well, and that, you know, for this sort of astonishing equality campaigner to die through a lack of the equality that she was talking about is like incredibly poignant.
Definitely. I think it just goes to show kind of the changes that we've gone through from then and now. Yeah, it's absolutely maddening that we still have some of these issues today as well, though.
Yeah, I mean, well, and again, talking about nasty women and the fact that that movement started to fundraise for women's healthcare, women's reproductive healthcare, because Donald Trump was threatening to defund that, which he then partially did while he was in power. Yeah, and it's very sobering and shocking to think that we're still having to fight those, having to fight those campaigns and trying to change those things in society. And it was interesting that you were talking about how Amrita was wanted to investigate and show different types of people in society and not necessarily just really wealthy people. But I think that quite a lot of the people involved in the suffragette movement who we know a lot about were very wealthy. But then I say actually who we know a lot, but some who we don't know about. So one of the figures in your series was a princess, is that right?
Yeah, so I was really, really surprised to find a princess was a suffragette. So her name was Princess Sofia Dilip Singh. Because of what had happened with the empire and colonialism around that time, her and her family were brought over to London. Unfortunately, her father, who was brought over when he was younger, he got into like lots of gambling and drinking. But the family stayed in a home, which was it was let to them by Queen Victoria. So they had a good upbringing. They were taken care of. And they had like governesses and things like that as well. And Sophia would go on to kind of see these inequalities where she was in London, but then also learn about things that were going on in India, even though she wasn't allowed to visit India. And there's a really great photo, which I'll also show, and it shows her selling the suffragette newspaper. So what she's doing, she's selling the newspaper and she's spreading the word. And this lady looks quite fearless, like she doesn't care. And this act of hers got her into a little bit of trouble because there were a lot of white male MPs who went to Queen Victoria and petitioned that she get thrown out of her home because of the way she was acting. It was very unwomanly, I suppose. That's how they put it. So yeah, they actually wrote to Queen Victoria asking that she get kicked out of her home for acting in this way. And Queen Victoria at the time, she didn't say anything. So she neither opposed it or showed any support for it, but she would just she didn't say anything. And I think a part of that might have been, she might have maybe understood it as a woman, that obviously it was a man's world at the time, and men were always, probably the MPs were always trying to tell her what to do as well at the same time. So I don't think she was going to budge. And it was her goddaughter after all. Sophia was her goddaughter. So I think maybe that influenced it quite a lot. Yeah, so that was a thing back then. I really wish I'd learnt about this in school. It was like fascinating to find out about these things.
Yeah, I think when we've chatted about this before, I think we've both said as well that it's kind of shocking that we've got to the ages that we are before we've really realised that these women were doing all these amazing things. And I guess something for me as well is that now, how can I educate my children about this? And things like your series are a great way to do that, because they're so so beautiful to look at and so interesting and so appealing, like especially the idea of a matchbox for a child. That's like really, really interesting, isn't it? And like I one of my children, Finn, has come to one of your talks about this series, and absolutely loved it, found it really, really interesting and engaging. She was 9, I think, when she came to that, and through work like this, I think it's a great way for young people to start understanding some of these histories, because it's just so beautiful and engaging and so visual.
Yeah, definitely. I would want my son to like learn about the culture as well. And I just find it such a shame that I had no idea. My sisters had no idea. My cousins had no idea, and probably my grandmother had no idea either. Just generations, because that kind of history seems to be hidden and almost kind of we don't remember things that have happened like that, which are so significant to our day now. And I think it's good to unearth these documents and images, like the photo that I found of Sophia. I think it's just really important to kind of show younger generations that, this is what happened. Change can be good, and these are the people who kind of partially liberated us so that we can vote now as well.
You mentioned your research then. Could you chat a little bit about what research you've done and how that's worked?
Yeah, so when I started delving into this Narivad series, I found a photo. Again, moving from Sophia Dilip Singh, I found a photo of her where she's in this parade, and I would later on find out that it was the Empire Parade. So these women they were doing a march for women's rights. And Sophia was invited by Emmeline, Pankhurst, and there's other women in this photo who really interested me. I couldn't find all of their names. I had to go on the British Library archives and really delve in. And there were other researchers, luckily, who had also looked into this as well. And it was really just interesting to find each of their names and then find out the history behind them, which is how the Narivad series began, because I started looking into these women. So
Can you
yeah, it
tell
was the Empire Parade, and that's what started it.
Can you tell us how that developed out into other people as well, not just people who were at the parade, but other figures in the movement?
Yeah, definitely. So this photo is just of these South Asian women in their saris, holding, there's 2 elephant kind of ornate things that they're holding. They've got a flag and everything. But then it made me wonder about the rest of the parade. So if this was the Indian segment, then where's the African segment? Where are all the other parts of the empire? Now, unfortunately, quite a lot of these photos are lost. So it might have been that some of the women who were there, who were actually campaigning quite actively, we don't know about them because there's no record. And I think it was highly likely that this photo still exists because Sophia was the goddaughter of Victoria. She was wearing like a sari, and back then when they were looking at these clothes, they were probably like, "What is she wearing? What is this?" And that it was more of a spectacle that they could get like an image of and put it on the newspaper. Yeah, unfortunately, I wanted to know about all the other women and what had happened. So, looking at this women's coronation procession, I wanted to find out about the women who were also in the different sections from other countries, other colonies, including Africa, for example. There's no photos that show the women from that section, unfortunately. There's only the one from India that exists in the British archives. So, although I did matchboxes around these women from South Asian countries and India, I also wanted to find out more about different classes. So I looked into a suffragette called Eliza Knight, who was very prominent in her campaigning, and she did quite a lot as well. She was disabled, but she didn't let this stop her. Obviously, it would have been a challenge at the time during Victorian ages. She didn't let it stop her, and her partner, also in the matchbox, called Donald Knight, he greatly supported her. And even though they faced racism because he was of Jamaican descent, they didn't let that hinder them or stop them anyway. And I found that really, really encouraging and also inspirational. So I've made their matchbox very yellow and bright to kind of convey this feeling that I was feeling at the time.
I think that makes me think as well about another figure in your series, who's a more contemporary figure who has also fought for, like, particularly for workers' rights. Is that right?
Yeah, so there was a lady called Jaya Bent Desai. So to help her husband in 1974, she took a low-paid job with Grunwick, which was a mail-order film processing factory in Willesden in North London. So one day, on 20th of August in 1976, a line manager compared the workers to say that they were chattering like monkeys on the basis that they were speaking in their mother tongues. She replied, "What you're running here is not a factory, it's a zoo. There are many types of animals in a zoo. Some are monkeys who dance to your tune, others are lions who can bite your head off. We are those lions, Mr. Manager. I've had enough. I want my freedom." I found this really, really inspiring that she led over 100 workers out of the factory in dispute of these bad working conditions and this treatment towards immigrant workers at the time, which was shocking, as the Victorian era we discussed how people were fighting for their equal rights, and this was still going on in the 70s as well. And it's kind of still going on now as well, to be fair.
Can you tell me a little bit about your motivation for taking the series, making the series more contemporary? Because is that right that she's the only more contemporary character in the series?
Yeah, she's the most contemporary one. The other ones were Victorian. But yeah, I decided to add her because it's so important to it was too important to not to acknowledge.
So I guess you saying that makes me think, is this series finished? Is it going to carry on? Are you going to keep doing more and more contemporary people, or are you going to do wider wider research into suffragettes, or is it just finished?
You know what? I know we've talked about this before as well, but I don't think it is. I don't think I can stop. Before I thought, oh, maybe I can stop with the Narivad series. But Narivad, it means like feminist in Sanskrit. So the whole premise of it was finding these strong South Asian women you don't normally see in, well, I've never grown up with any strong role models who have been South Asian living in the UK. And I thought it was really interesting to try and, find people in history. So for me, yeah, that was interesting to find these people. But then I found other people with disabilities and other issues as well. And I found it very interesting to add all of them together, because I think it works very collectively and it's very complex the way British history has kind of formulated around that. And I'll definitely be doing more contemporary figures because I think it's a massive issue just with climate change and other things as well. Yeah, it's a massive issue to think about. And I think when artists like yourself as well, when we think of these really important things that are going on around us, we generally make art about it, and we try and convey that passion into something. So I think, it'll definitely continue.
Oh, well, I'm so excited about that because I absolutely love the series, and yeah, I can't wait to see who ends up being in it next.
So thinking about the collective people who make up the Narivad series, I think it's also worth a mention saying that your series Worth also inspired this, and kind of it's a continual thing as well, isn't it?
So my Worth series is I think there are about 20 of them now, and they're portraits of women and non-binary people cut into high value banknotes, mostly £50 notes and $50 notes. And they're made out of hundreds and hundreds of very tiny little incisions, and each one is heart shaped. So by making them, I also generate like hundreds of tiny little hearts made made out of £50 or $50 or other high value banknotes. So for each portrait, I collect all those together and put them in a tiny little glass vial like that, and that little jar accompanies the portrait. And yet again, we've talked about nasty women so much in this chat, but it again something that's sort of developed from and alongside being involved in the nasty women movement. And back in 2017, myself and curator Michaela Wetherall and artist Ali Smith were organising a Nasty Women exhibition here in Newcastle. Oh, Sophia, it's been so amazing to have this conversation with you, and thank you because we've talked about this quite a lot now, and every time we talk about this series and your approach to it, I just learn more things about you and your work and about the suffragette movement, and activism more widely, and it's absolutely brilliant. I love it, so thank you so much.
Well, that includes our talk on my new work, Narivad. I hope you've enjoyed it and have been inspired by these amazing women. I would like to say thanks to Lady Kitt for facilitating, and also to GemArts for the opportunity to be a part of the Masala Festival. And to you, the audience, for watching and listening. Thank you so much.